Yesterday I mentioned that Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng has spoken out about his feelings around the COVID-19 lockdown and the impact that has on our constitutional rights. And I said I would today cover exactly what the Chief Justice means by this concern. And I will reference two articles that once again you can see in the description below. Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng said, "I'm deeply worried about the impact of COVID-19 on South Africa." And this is in the Maverick Citizen. And the other article is in Briefly, and it says, "Chief Justice Mogoeng, lockdown regulations not above the Constitution." So I think both of these articles are related to the same time and the same setting, exactly the same things that were said at the time. And the Chief Justice, they met him at his farm. So he's really a man of Africa, and I believe that he's fully on our side. And Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng is the only person keeping us at this stage from becoming a dictatorship, because him and the high bench in the Constitutional Court are the only people stopping us from our President Cyril Ramaphosa imposing a state of emergency on the country. That is why we are currently in a state of disaster, and that is why all our constitutional rights are still intact. If Cyril Ramaphosa wants to declare a state of emergency, the Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, as well as his Council of Judges in the Constitutional Court, would have to approve that, because then the Constitution is set aside and the military and the police can literally take control, exactly the way they have basically been behaving at the moment with curfews and what have you. Let's get into the article. The head of the Judiciary, and this is Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, you need to understand that he appoints a state president in his position as president. So he is right at the top. He is the man between the Constitution and corrupt and terrorism type government, because our government has been terrorizing us now for the past 2 months. So he spoke to News 24 this week from under a tree on his farm, where he encouraged citizens to challenge government decisions they deem to be infringing on their rights. Now, just before the lockdown, when Cyril Ramaphosa actually wanted to close the courts, the Chief Justice said, "No, we will keep the courts open so that citizens can hold the government to account," because Parliament was suspended. So although I believe that the current parties in Parliament are absolutely useless at holding the government to account, and especially the executive to account, there is no parliamentary sitting at the moment. So the oversight they are supposed to be performing, when they are actually standing side by side with our president in his decisions and have only started speaking out of late, that constitutional formation that is put there to hold the executive to account is not accounting currently at all. So the Chief Justice decided he needs to keep the courts open so that we could take the government to court. The problem is most of us either don't have the funds, the knowledge, or the know-how of actually going to court and bringing our President Cyril Ramaphosa and his cronies in his council to account. He said, "Even a constitutional functioning state of emergency is subject to constitutional review. The courts have a final say on the validity or otherwise on measures taken in a state of emergency." So they can decide in a state of emergency, which we are not currently in, what can and cannot happen. Our constitutional rights are crucial, and there can never be a situation where any of us are not subject to constitutional review, he said. So we are always under the Constitution, even under a state of emergency. They will decide, the Constitutional Court judges will decide what will be allowed and what will not be allowed. But then Cyril will be handing over power to them, and that is the last thing that a terrorist wants. Mogoeng said this was why he did not agree with the view that courts should have been shut down during the early phase of the national lockdown, because people should have the option to challenge any violation of their rights during this period. He is clearly stating that our president wanted the courts shut down. For everyone that has been turning our president into a national superhero during this time, start thinking about your actions and apologize to your friends who spoke out against the president, because the way he is behaving is like a terrorist. Go and look at the definition of a terrorist. I actually did a video on the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter, and everything our president is doing right now is terrorism activities. It's nothing else. I encourage every citizen who believes his or her rights have been infringed to, without hesitation, approach our courts. So the courts that are constitutionally ordained to look into the constitutionality of acts or conduct of anyone can review the matter and decide whether or not citizens have been wronged or citizens have been acting under an incorrect understanding of what the position is, he said. In other words, when ministers speak out, they will obviously try and interpret the rules that they've created under their understanding that will suit them. But the courts can interpret what those mean and whether they are legal. These disaster management institutions that they've brought in, these regulations, they are not laws. Remember yesterday I said that the only way for you to be able to be arrested is for a level 1 offense. Currently you are being arrested for things that aren't even criminal law. It's illegal what the police is doing. It's very important to understand this, that every action of the police with every arrest has been illegal. Earlier this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa said in his weekly newsletter that every citizen has a right to challenge government's regulations in court. And that is why the courts have remained open. I know that of many people that have gone to the magistrate, and the magistrate has issued them licenses that go completely against these regulations, because none of these regulations hold up in a court of law. None of them. So people have been challenging this and have been given permits to perform their work, travel, and all sorts. Just no one has been told about this. Mogoeng said while he does not align himself with the president, he has long maintained that citizens must rely on the courts if they believe the government was infringing their rights. I can tell you now that I know for sure that Mogoeng does not align himself with the president, and we can absolutely be happy that he is currently our Chief Justice. The Chief Justice said the rising cases of coronavirus in the country and the economic impact were deeply concerning to him. I am deeply worried, Mogoeng said, reflecting on the impact COVID-19 has had not only on the judiciary but on the entire country. Mogoeng said COVID-19 and the related lockdown have made a bad situation worse in the judiciary, with cases piling up. Had South African courts been modernized much earlier, he said, virtual court proceedings could not be a foreign concept that was being resisted from some quarters. The first challenge, speaking for the judiciary, is that we haven't been able to finalize cases as expeditiously as we would want to, as expeditiously as the public is entitled to have us do. The effect of COVID-19 has been to make the situation worse for the judiciary and for the broader public, Mogoeng said. While there was an effort to have matters heard virtually, some lawyers have rebuffed the idea for obvious reasons. Often lawyers work for criminals. You risk people saying, if they don't succeed, you risk people saying, I did not succeed because I was compelled by the court to present my case under the most unusual circumstances, Mogoeng said. So they would imply that they didn't have a fair trial. He said for many years he has been pushing for a court modernization along the lines of the SA Revenue Services, SARS. But you need funding to be able to do that. As you know, the public purse is highly challenged. There are so many key areas competing for the limited resources, Mogoeng said. The Chief Justice said the lockdown has exacerbated the problem of backlogs in courts that were already a serious concern before the lockdown started. And the challenge is we really aren't able to plan effectively around the lockdown because we don't even know when it's going to end. We don't know when the phase 2 is going to kick in, level 3, and how long that is going to allow the courts to function, particularly where it matters the most, at the magistrates' courts and the High Court and the Court of Equivalent Status, he said. Mogoeng said courts would have to prioritize cases impacting the economy and gender-based violence, which I know is currently a case after speaking to a lawyer. But he said the biggest concern in the criminal justice system was that courts don't function alone. You've got a number of other key stakeholders involved, like the police. Police must have their act in order in relation to criminal matters. The prosecuting authority, witnesses, and the legal representatives, some provided by Legal Aid South Africa, others funded by themselves. Away from the judiciary, Mogoeng's concerns extend further, and this is, to me, the key of this article. I'm worried about the impact of our inability to function as normal on the economy. So this is a Chief Justice speaking out about the economy and how that affects us under the Constitution. I'm worried about our inability to function normally and the impact thereof on crime. Mogoeng said he was worried that mass unemployment may lead to a spike in crime. What will happen to the multitudes who will not have a source of income? Isn't it likely to contribute to the already more concerning level of crime that we had to contend with so far as a society? But there's a silver lining too, he said. This lockdown has given us an opportunity to reflect on how materialistic we are at times and how much need there is out there. In other words, how many people literally have nothing. The need that must not be theorized about, the need that must not be intellectualized about, but the need that cries out for practical steps should be taken by each citizen who has something to share, he said. He's saying South Africans should apply the spirit of Ubuntu, where people help each other and look after each other in the community. And I strongly advocate for communities looking after each other. We should become completely independent of this government so that we need it less, so that the people can realize that we need a new governance system and a new electoral system, something I've spoken about in my other videos. And for you to watch these videos, please subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon so that you can get notifications of these videos. Go to my channel, look at the various playlists that I've set up, and you will be able to find these videos where I speak specifically in the examples that we have of problems in government, big problems in government, with a party gang system, and in question everything in section 5A, 5B, and section 6. You will be able to find all the evidence that I provide for the need that we have for this change. And the Chief Justice is hinting at this stage, that we need to change our system. The Chief Justice relayed how domestic workers employed to assist with looking after his aged mother had proposed that parts of their salaries be contributed towards the gardener, who was at risk of losing his income. He said the lockdown showed practical examples of Ubuntu. Now, I echo the sentiments of the Chief Justice, and I know that certain parties have actually approached him in the past, parties that are not represented in Parliament, to actually stand for the office of President. Now, for that to happen properly, we need a new governance system where our president is elected directly. And I want all my subscribers to start talking about this with their families. We need to change the system that is binding us right now, where parties are behaving like gangs, where the ANC government is behaving like a gang, where all the parties that govern in different areas, even the DA, is behaving like a gang. Because in the city of Cape Town, our rights are being taken away. And it's not just the ANC doing this. This is parties governing. All parties that are governing are implementing systems that come from the World Health Organization, from the United Nations, and these things that they are imposing on us is taking away our rights more and more. While they are growing government, what we need to do is make government smaller. For that to happen, us as communities need to stand up and show the spirit of Ubuntu and help each other, stand by each other and help where we can. We cannot live selfish lives anymore, because if we do that, this country will come to naught. In the other article, it talks about the regulations that are not above the Constitution. And yesterday, you can go and look at my video that I did on how someone that smokes can refuse to say that where they got their cigarettes when the police actually ask them or supposedly catch them smoking. And the police has been doing this, confiscating cigarettes from people when they have absolutely no right to do so. People have been arrested if they couldn't supply a slip to say where they purchased the cigarettes when you're allowed to smoke within your car when stopped at a roadblock. If you don't produce a slip, they will pull your car off the road, impound it, and lock you up. Currently, the moment you get to court, you will be released because the justice system will not keep you because the police would have arrested you illegally. And this is happening continually at the moment. So, people, look out for your rights. Watch my other videos. I speak about constitutional rights all the time. I believe in liberty and your right to exercise your rights and freedoms. We have become too used to our government dictating to us and for your teachers in school and your parents telling you to always obey the law. When the law is wrong, it is your duty to disobey it and rise up against the government of the moment.